Before we get started, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe right now because what you're about to hear might change how you see UConn women's basketball forever. Because Michigan didn't beat UConn. Tennessee didn't beat UConn either. But both teams did something far more dangerous. They exposed a real weak spot in Geno Auriemma's system, and analysts across college basketball are sounding the alarm. For nearly 30 years, UConn hasn't just won games. They've controlled reality. Teams come in confident, hyped, believing they've cracked the code, and by halftime, they're down double digits wondering what went wrong. That's the Geno effect. But this season? For the first time in a long time, two very different teams, Michigan and Tennessee, made UConn uncomfortable. Not rattled. Not panicked. Uncomfortable. And if you watched those games closely, you saw it too. The extra dribbles. The rushed passes. The uncharacteristic turnovers. Moments where UConn looked human. Analysts say it's not about talent. It's not about depth. It's not even about. It's about pressure, relentless, sustained pressure, and what happens when Geno's precision-built machine is forced into chaos. Today, we're breaking down how Michigan quietly planted the seed, why Tennessee turned that pressure up to DEFCON 1, and what this means for UConn when March arrives. Because if this weak spot is real, the rest of the country is already taking notes. So like, comment, subscribe, and let's get into it. Michigan didn't beat UConn. Tennessee didn't beat UConn either. But if you watched closely, really closely, you saw something far more dangerous than a loss. You saw Geno Auriemma's UConn blink. For most of the last 3 decades, UConn women's basketball hasn't just been dominant. It's been inevitable. Teams come in with game plans, energy, belief, and by the middle of the third quarter, reality hits. The spacing is too clean. The reads are too fast. The execution is too ruthless. That's the UConn script. But when Michigan and Tennessee faced the Huskies this season, something unusual happened in the early stretches of both games. Not panic. Not collapse. Discomfort. And that discomfort is what has analysts talking, not because UConn is suddenly vulnerable, but because for the first time, two very different teams exposed the same stress point. Not talent. Not depth. Not coaching. Pressure. Sustained pressure. Let's rewind. When Michigan stepped onto the floor against UConn, nobody expected fireworks. This wasn't supposed to be a referendum game. But Michigan came out doing something that most teams don't dare attempt against Geno's system. They disrupted the entry point. They didn't just guard shooters. They denied passes. They crowded dribble lanes. They forced UConn's guards to initiate offense a step or two farther from where they're comfortable. And that tiny shift mattered. UConn still ran beautiful sets. Still found looks. Still controlled the scoreboard. But the ball didn't move quite as freely. There were extra dribbles. Extra glances to the sideline. Extra moments where decision-making slowed by half a beat. That half beat is everything at this level. Michigan forced turnovers not by gambling, but by making UConn play faster than it wanted to while simultaneously making reads harder. It's a paradox. Speed them up mentally while slowing them down physically. That's when analysts started taking. Then came Tennessee. And Tennessee did it louder. This wasn't subtle pressure. This was old school, physical, relentless, body-on-body basketball. Tennessee pushed tempo, but more importantly, they never let UConn get comfortable initiating offense. For stretches of the first half, UConn looked. They were tied at halftime. That alone was shocking. This was a team that had been burying opponents by the second quarter. Instead, Tennessee had them thinking. You could see it in the spacing. Players were closer together than usual. Passing angles tightened. Guards picked up their dribble earlier than they wanted to. And here's the key detail analysts keep emphasizing. UConn didn't struggle because they lack ball handlers. They struggled because they rely on precision, and pressure disrupts precision before it disrupts score. Against Tennessee, UConn turned the ball over more than usual. Not disastrous numbers, but uncharacteristic. And when that happens, it reveals something deeper. Geno's system is designed to punish mistakes, not to survive chaos. That's not a flaw. It's a philosophy. UConn wins by controlling the game. By dictating pace. By making opponents feel like they're always one step behind. When opponents flip that script, even briefly, it creates rare moments of vulnerability. And that's what analysts are pointing to. Not a blueprint to beat UConn. A stress test. Because here's the part people miss, UConn still blew Tennessee out in the second half. Once adjustments were made, once pressure was solved, once spacing widened again, it was over. That's the scary part. But the question analysts are asking isn't can UConn handle it's, what happens if someone can apply it for 40 minutes? Michigan couldn't. Tennessee couldn't. Few teams can. To sustain that level of defensive pressure, you need depth, discipline, conditioning, and offensive composure so you don't burn out trying to guard them. Most teams gas out by the third quarter. But in March, when rotations tighten and possessions slow, that early discomfort becomes magnified. That's why this Geno Auriemma has built his dynasty on eliminating variables. His teams don't rely on hero ball. They rely on reads, timing, trust. When pressure forces players into improvisation instead of execution, it temporarily removes the system's biggest advantage. Analysts like Chantel Jennings have pointed out that this UConn team, while incredibly talented, is still learning how to absorb chaos without losing structure. Younger players are being asked to make high-level decisions under duress. Veterans are adjusting to new roles. This isn't a weakness in the traditional sense. It's a growing pain. And Geno knows it. If history tells us anything, it's that Auriemma doesn't ignore stress points, he weaponizes them. What Michigan and Tennessee exposed in January becomes a strength in March. That's why opposing coaches should be nervous. Because once UConn figures out how to welcome pressure instead of neutralizing it, the gap widens again. Still, the tape is out there now. Pressure the guards early. Deny the first pass. Force secondary actions. Make them think before they flow. It won't beat them, but it might slow them. And slowing UConn, even briefly, is the closest thing women's college basketball has to hope. So here's the truth. Michigan didn't beat UConn. Tennessee didn't either. But they showed the rest of the country something it rarely gets to see. UConn can be pushed. Not broken. Not beaten easily. But pushed. And that's what makes the season so fascinating. Because now the tape is out. Coaches are studying it. Analysts are debating it. And Geno Auriemma? He's already thinking 2 steps ahead, turning pressure into practice, discomfort into discipline. That's the scary part for everyone else. If UConn learns how to thrive in chaos, not just survive it, then this weak spot won't be a weakness at all, it'll be the moment that made them even more dangerous. March is coming. Adjustments are coming. And history tells us UConn usually finishes these stories on their terms. If you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because this season is far from. Who do you think can apply that pressure for 40 minutes? South Carolina? UCLA? LSU? Let me know below, and I'll see you in the next one.